the first thing you fundamentally have to know is how are women different than men? It's very, very simple. The definition, men and women, right? The woman carries the egg, the man has the sperm. When the woman has one egg, or a very few eggs, and the man has many, many sperms, and when the egg needs to gestate, that means that the commitment that a woman has to offspring and the risk associated for a woman with having offspring is very, very different than the risk for men. And so that is the fundamental distinction you need to understand in order to understand everything man-woman. If you understand that, it's like counting, and then you can do like addition and then multiplication. Everything derives from that basic premise. That is the basic premise. But there are different strategies, therefore, for women and men, right? There's the male strategy of have as many kids as possible, and then those kids, you hope that they're raised by the woman or raised by another father or whatever. And then there's the alternate male strategy of have the kid and try and stick around, right? And so that means in a woman's eyes, when she's sleeping with a guy, she's looking for one of two different things. Either the guy who is what we'll call the lover, the guy who will get her pregnant, and then she doesn't care if he leaves, or the man who she's expecting to stick around. And the way that she will consider the relationship with you, the way that she will consider her attraction to you, like how attracted she doesn't consider her attraction, it's an involuntary thing, but her level of attraction to you, and the things that trigger attraction and trigger her fighting with you, getting pissed off with you, falling in love with you, are fundamentally different in those two categories. And so if you're dealing with a woman in a lover category and you do certain things, she may love it. You do the same exact things in a provider category, she may really hate it. And vice versa. There are some things that she really like in the provider category that she'll hate in the lover category. And so a lot of times you guys talked about these things in relationships, these different setting boundaries in relationships, multiple long-term relationships, sometimes mixed signals of like she's into the relationship, not into the relationship, that kind of stuff. It's very important to think about what is the category of relationship and what is the frame of the relationship you're having. And it can evolve over time. And if it does evolve, or if you do switch between one category and the other, or if you do start violating the category you're in, a girl will have very serious problems with that. The first example that just really interestingly comes to mind, I had a girl that I was I use the term dating loosely here. I had a girl I was sleeping with in Los Angeles. And the reason I use the term dating loosely is that she was very open with me. We met, and she didn't tell me like the night we met, but before our first date, she told me she has a boyfriend. And she said, I have a boyfriend, is that a problem for you? I'm like, we can still hang out, whatever. So we hung out, slept together. She was very clear that she has a serious boyfriend. She even, I think a first or second time we ended up sleeping together, she like rolled over in bed and called her boyfriend and said, baby, I love you, everything's fine, all that kind of stuff, and then hung up. And I knew she had a boyfriend. She knew I was okay with it. It was fine. It was a kind of an interesting thing that she would do that right in front of me, but it was very clear that she was seeing me from the lover perspective and him from the provider perspective, and she was making a clear distinction in her own mind. And when she's looking for someone in the lover perspective, she's looking for good genetics. That's it, essentially, right? She's looking for the guy who's going to give the best genes to an offspring, and she's looking for the guy who is really good with women, right? The idea being that whatever kind of psychological traits or behavioral traits that are there that make me good with women are going to make my offspring good with women. So that's what she's looking for in that lover trait. For a provider trait, she'd be looking for things like stability, comfort, the fact of commitment, and the fact that I'll stick around. And so within a lover trait, caring very little about her is actually a benefit, right? It actually makes you more high value, because if you care less about her, you probably have more women around, you have more abundance, you have more, it's indicating you have better genes that are attracting more women. Within a provider frame, sticking around and being loyal and caring for the girl is something she very much needs, and she will value very, very highly. And so that very same trait of being attached within the provider frame might actually make her like the relationship more. Within the lover frame, will actually make her like it far less. So in this particular case, what ended up happening was I had a date scheduled with her, and I happened to get sick. I had a really, really bad cough. And she wanted me to come on the date anyway. I should have just said no. I should have just canceled on her, but I was like, okay, fine, I'll just go. And I showed up to the date. I was like coughing and sick and like didn't appear healthy. And that was the last time I ever saw her. Which is really interesting, because she wanted this guy from the lover frame. She wanted the extremely good genes. Seeing me sick was a huge turnoff for her. And that was actually literally the last time we saw each other. I mean, not really surprising when you think about it, but it definitely shows, because I've had many relationships where I've had long relationships, and there was a lot more comfort, there was a lot more stability, and you can get sick with someone and it's not a big deal, right? But it really depends, again, what they are evaluating you on. Is it the lover or is it the provider? There are some women that will live their entire lives and never cheat, right? For a variety of reasons. Maybe because they have some kind of belief system that's instilled in them, and they're in a certain community, they see a lot of value in it, and because of that, they see too much risk in cheating and they never do it, or they identify in such a way that they would never consider it. It's a possibility, right? There are also other women that will never cheat because they happen very early on to meet a guy who is absolutely the best they're going to do, and the risk there is too high, right? And there are also women that cheat left, right, and center. There are women that cheat all the time, right? And the same woman, I think, if she lived a different life history, could be either one of those, if that kind of answers your question. That's my personal theory and thought and idea on it, and also what's kind of supported by biology.
Should you try to be in the lover frame or the provider frame based on the girl, or is one always like better than the other?
Good question. So I'm going to tell you that I would say that always is a tough word for me. Right? If anybody's watching any of my videos, always is a very tough word. I try to never use the word always. But very close to always, I would say you should have access to the lover frame, if that makes sense. So I would say you either want to be in the lover frame or be the provider who got into the provider frame through the conduit of the lover frame first. Because if you're fully in the provider frame, you're definitely at risk of losing the girl for a variety of reasons. You're at risk of, if you get into a long-term relationship, having the girl cheat with a guy who's in the lover category. You're at risk of her meeting a better provider and negotiating up based on that, right? Another great example of lover versus provider frame. I'm probably gonna do a lot of anecdotes for you guys. You guys are gonna hear a lot of girl stories in this speech. This is when I was playing poker for a living. I met a girl. She was a cocktail waitress at the casino, and I was having a really rough day when we met. I'd lost like $5,000. It was like early morning. I'd played all through the night. I was not loving my life. But she came through. I'd never seen her before. She was very hot, and there was a guy at my table who was drunk and being belligerent, and so he was giving her a hard time. We kind of made eyes and like kind of rolled our eyes at the same thing. So next time she came around, I stood up, talked to her for a little bit, commiserated, flirted a little bit. And then I basically said, look, I'm losing so much money right now. I'm having a rough day, but when does your shift get off, right? And she told me when her shift gets off. I said, okay, if I get all my money back by the end of your shift, let's go out and celebrate. If not, I'm just gonna probably go to sleep and I'm gonna hate life. But if I happen to win all my money back, let's go out and celebrate. And she's like, yeah, sounds like a deal, right? So I stayed and played for a bit. And I ended up winning most of it back. And then at some point when she was off doing her cocktail waitress things, I went to the casino, what's it called, the cashier, and I went and bought some more chips and I brought them back so it looked like I won a bunch more. Right? So it looked like I made like $12,000 during her shift, basically. So I'm walking out with a whole bunch of chips. She's liking it. We make plans. I didn't actually go out with her after the shift. I was like, honestly, I'll take you out sometime. I'm too tired right now, but let's exchange numbers. I'll take you out. Took her out, slept with her on the first date. It was good. We hooked up a few more times, right? I'm like, okay, this is great. But then she went kind of ghost on me like a week or so later. And the next thing I know, I see her sitting behind a different poker player at the casino who happens to play a much bigger game than I was, who was a more famous poker player than I was. And I'm like, well, I played the baller game, right? I played the I'm a provider and I make lots of money as my way of winning her over. And it kind of makes sense that when she met a guy who's actually much richer than me, who was also a pretty cool guy, to be fair. Kind of hate him, but like he's a pretty cool guy. It makes sense she traded up because I set up this paradigm of this is my value proposition, and then somebody else had a better version of that value proposition, right? And so you want to be very careful of that. Within the lover value proposition, your value proposition is a lot more unique and emotional, and so it's a lot harder to directly compare. Also within the lover value proposition, if you are actually truly being the lover role, you actually wouldn't care so much if she cheated, right? Which is kind of an interesting dynamic, right? But I think it's best the best ideally is to be capable of both, right? To be the guy who could be a provider if you wanted to, but yet she sees you as a lover first and foremost. And so even if you are providing, she still sees you as the lover. Because women treat lovers a lot better than they treat providers. They just inherently do, because of what they're getting from them, right? And this actually goes to some of the relationship stuff and like girls having boundaries, pushing guys around, stuff like this. Tell me if this has ever happened to you in a relationship where you're in a relationship and the girl asks you for something. And it's something, just a little thing. It's a minor inconvenience. It's fairly reasonable, so you just do it. No big deal. And she gets happier because, you did a nice thing for her. And then she asks you for another thing. And you do it because it's not a big deal. And she gets happier. And because you're being a good boyfriend, you're being nice to her, et cetera. And she asks for another thing, and you're kind of like, ugh, don't really want to do this one, but you do it. And she gets happier. And you do another one, and she gets happier. And she asks for another one, you do it, and then she has no respect for you, and the relationship ends. Has that ever happened? Something like that? It's kind of a weird thing that women do, where within any particular relationship, there's what you'd call, in game theory, a zero-sum part and a non-zero-sum part. So zero-sum means for every win there's a loss. Non-zero-sum means there's a net win or a net loss collectively, okay? So between any two people in a relationship, the more effort you're putting into the girl, the better her life is, right? Makes sense, right? But the more effort you're putting in, that takes a little bit away from you. And as long as you are able to be the same person and keep bringing that same effort, the more of it you can give to her, the better off she is. But if at some point, because of you putting in that effort, it ruins something for you or ruins you for her, then the relationship is over. So if she sees you as this high-value lover and she can't have you and she's excited about that, and then you do her a favor, she loves it because she won in a zero-sum way. And then you do another favor and she loves it because she won in a zero-sum way. But each time you do that, you're getting a little further out of the lover category, a little closer to the provider category. And at some point, when you cross over that boundary, now all of a sudden, you've been giving her more and more and more, but what she would have asked for you in a provider category in order to date her would have been way more. And now you switch into the provider category as a provider who's not giving her as much as she wants from a provider. When she's done with the relationship, she breaks up with you. Crazy. And the funny thing about it is she did it to herself, essentially, right? Because she kept asking for the thing that made it incrementally better, incrementally better, incrementally better, and then destroyed the entire thing. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have boundaries in a relationship, even when it doesn't seem that important, even when it's on little things, because it's not just about the boundary and not just about the convenience, it's about how she sees you, right? What you are in her eyes. And so oftentimes what ends up mattering with women isn't necessarily the actual thing, it's the frame around the thing, right? And there's tons of little subtle ways this is conveyed. I had a guy that used to coach with me, and it's very convenient and easy for when arranging dates with girls or taking girls home and stuff like that to just pay for a girl's taxi, pay for a girl's Uber, these kinds of things. But the problem, pay for girls' drinks, right? And these things are all very useful conveniences. On the other hand, though, when you do those things, you're kind of putting yourself into the provider category, right? And so it's not important per se, but it's a little extra benefit if you can do those things while still remaining in the lover category, while still not seeming like you're bending over backwards or trying too hard. And so what this guy that I used to work with did, and I think it's a really good idea, he just made a big deal of the fact that his spending was going on the company card. He's like, oh yeah, my company's paying for it, right? Because if the company's paying for it instead of him paying for it, he's not the provider, he's not bending over backwards, he's not spending his resources on the girl. He's actually taking resources from someone to spend on the girl, which in a way is kind of like an underhanded lover, I'll cheat on someone kind of way of being, right? So he's actually getting the benefit in terms of logistics and benefit in terms of convenience that he would get being the provider, but he's doing it for the frame of being the lover, right? And there's a lot of these situations where that kind of stuff will come up, right? Where it's not just about what's happening, it's about how it's framed, right? And so there's a way when it comes to, for example, buying drinks for girls. If you walk right up to a girl and her first thing she says is, buy me a drink, and then you buy her the drink, she has said, the only way I'm going to talk to you is in the provider category. And you've said, okay, I'll be in the provider category. It's not the greatest place to start off. And so I usually won't do that, right? Just to go a little deeper in this, there is a paradox here. Because if you say yes, you lose. If you say no, you also lose, right? Because if she said, based on your first impression, hopefully just make a better first impression so this doesn't happen. But if based on the first impression she's saying, buy me a drink, and then you say no, well, she said, this is the only way I'll talk to you. You said no, she's like, okay, I won't talk to you, right? So interestingly enough, the correct answer for that situation is maybe. or yes, but, or yes, when, or something like that, right? She says, buy me a drink. I'd love to do that once I get to know you better. Tell me more about yourself, right? So it's yes, but later, or yes, under certain circumstances, because yes loses and no loses. But the reason the yes loses is because you're putting yourself in the wrong category. So this idea, again, of the lover versus provider frame is so critical, and it invades every single thing, right? So that's, when you're thinking about female psychology, that's one thing I want you to absolutely understand, right? Fully and totally understand lover-provider dynamics. So I'll leave it there, but once I come around through some other topics, if you guys have more questions about lover-provider, ask them, and we'll round out the whole thesis with that. Next thing I want you guys to understand with regards to women is kind of a global evolutionary concept, and this goes to all your questions about comfort, so you'll be very happy. I'm going to ask you guys a sort of a trick question, right? Non-misogynistic trick question. Who's smarter, men or women? Men? Men, women? Okay.
Biologically, women.
Interesting. Okay, so we have one men, one women, and we have a bunch of people abstaining because they don't want to say the wrong thing. It depends. It depends. Answer to everything. Yes, it depends.
It depends.
Okay, men, women. Okay, I'm not talking one-to-one. Like globally, the population of men, population of women, if we draw the bell curves, the center of the bell curve, which one's higher? That's the question. Same. He says men still. He says it depends. He says I take it back. Women are not smart anymore.
IQ, I think they're equal.
In terms of IQ, they're equal. That's correct.
They'd be equally good,
Yeah. Even if they weren't, I'm sure they calibrated the IQ test so that they are. So even if they weren't in the first place, I'm sure they adjusted it until it came out that way. But yeah, literally they do show up as equal on the IQ scale. All right. Now here's the second question: are there more male geniuses or female geniuses? Male. There was no hesitation on that one. You guys are all over that one. How about, are there more male homeless losers or female homeless losers? Also male. All right? And so what you're seeing here is two bell curves. They center around the same point, but they have very, very different edge behavior. Right? They're very differently shaped bell curves. And what happens is the female bell curve is very, very steep in the very, what do you call it? Steep, very high in the middle, centered towards the middle. The male bell curve is much more spread out. And that's not an accident. It's absolutely a feature of evolution, and it almost could not be any other way. And here's why. Imagine, okay, let's actually do it this way. What do you guys think, in terms of human history, the average amount of women that a man slept with in human history? What do you think that number is? And by average, I don't mean the arithmetic mean. I mean if you take the highest guy and the lowest guy and the highest guy and the lowest guy and end up at guy number middle, how many women did that man sleep with?
Probably 0.
Probably 0. Any other answers? I like probably 0. That's good. I would say probably 0 or 1. If you actually figure it out, it's either at 0 or 1, most likely 0 would be my guess. Sure. A very, very small number anyway, okay? So as a man, if that's, when you're born as a man, if that's your expected reproductive value is 0, or like, you know, let's average it like 0.2 or something like that. That's your average reproductive value. And you go do some dumb thing and get yourself killed. How much reproductive value did you lose?
You had nothing to begin with.
Not very much. Not very much. On the other hand, if you achieve some great thing and end up having 500 kids, how much reproductive value, percentage-wise, did you increase it by? Thousands and thousands and thousands of percent, right? And so there's a lot of benefit to men in taking risks because they can massively increase their genetic output and they can only minimally decrease it in terms of like on average over human history, right? And so that's why things like going to war, becoming a war hero and coming back could actually be potentially appealing and a path that men would voluntarily take, right? Or like becoming gladiators and like champions and sleeping with like a bunch of the whatever women. These crazy things that that seems insane, but it actually biologically makes a ton of sense, right? And there's a lot of smaller risks, right? The risk of becoming an entrepreneur instead of getting a safe job, right? If you become one of the richest men in the world, how many women could you potentially sleep with? Probably a lot, right? So there's this huge incentive for men to take risks. What about for women? What is the most children you think a woman could probably have? Realistically, reasonably. 15? Yeah, that's pretty high. Yeah, there probably are some record holders that are more than that, but 15 is a good safe number. Yeah, I'd say let's call 15 good. And if a woman was She wants to have kids, but she's doing everything wrong, basically, how many kids could she still have, probably? At least 1 or 2, if she really tries, because there's enough men that are having 0 out there that one of them will take her, right? And so, and even, by the way, we talk about 15 being the maximum, but in biology and human history, if you tried to do 15 as a woman, there's a good chance you'd die during childbirth, right, early on, because there was enough risk associated with that. So that's not even about how successful you are in life. It's just about the actual process of having kids might limit you, even beyond your other limitations, okay? So if a woman takes a crazy risk and gets herself killed, what's her genetic loss? Significant, right? And if a woman becomes super supremely successful and because of that somehow has 1 more kid, even assuming that becoming more successful would let her have more kids, it probably would actually just help her kids survive and maybe more grandkids or something, right? But what's her upside there? Minimal, at least compared to a man, right? And so that's why it is that there's more congestion in the female bell curve. And this is true for everything. It's not just intelligence, right? I believe, you have to check me on this, I believe it's true for female height. I think there's less spread in female height, female intelligence, certainly female risk-taking, all kinds of stuff like that, right? So the point is women tend to play it safe, right? This is why women want comfort. This is why women need comfort. That and along the lines of what I said at the start, which is the huge genetic investment with potentially being with a man. And so as men, we decided very quickly whether we would sleep with a girl because we need to act fast. We need to be impetuous and take risks sometimes. And also because the risk for us of having sex is potentially very low, right? We have 15 minutes of fun and then we're on our way. Women, on the other hand, need to be a lot more selective. They need to think things through. And also, there's a huge incentive for men to lie to women. There's a huge incentive for men to convey themselves as what they're not, right? Are you guys familiar with the concept of honest signals? You guys have heard this term, some of you, yes, some of you know? Okay. So honest signals is a wonderful, incredible topic in evolution and biology. Okay, I'll give you guys the very general example, and then I'll elaborate it to humans. So, most common example: why do peacocks have brightly colored feathers?
To attract the female.
Okay, to attract the female, but why is that attractive to a female?
You have to be healthy enough to produce the colors.
That and something else. That's part of it. That's half of it.
You have to avoid predators.
Yes, exactly. So it's the 2 things, right? So in order for a peacock to have brightly colored feathers, number 1, they have to be healthy. They have to have certain vitamins and minerals in their body or they physically can't do it. So they're saying to the peahen, I have these vitamins and minerals in my body, I am healthy. It's an honest signal, cannot be faked of being healthy. It's also an honest signal because despite looking like the clowns of the animal kingdom, right, they haven't been eaten by a predator, right? And they're beautiful, but essentially they're saying, please eat me. And they're surviving in spite of it. So how much more was it sort of fit? I guess that's the evolutionary word. How much more fit must they be in order to survive? So much more, right? So it's a very honest signal. It's basically impossible to fake, and so it is very, very attractive, right? Let's look at human behavior now. Honest and dishonest signals. If I walk up to you and have a clever pickup line, is that an honest signal? Very, very easy to fake. Right? If I tell one of you a line that I've used, you can go use my exact line without having to come up with it, without having to back it up, etc. Like maybe there's a certain delivery element to it, but you could rehearse that in a mirror, right? Not very honest. If I give you a shit test that you're not expecting, and you handle it in the moment perfectly, honest or dishonest signal?
Honest.
Much, much more honest, right? Because I didn't plan it, couldn't predict it, I had to react in the moment, right? Much more honest signal. If I tell you that I am a sex god, I'm assuming you're a woman, for the moment, right? Is it honest or dishonest signal?
Bullshit.
Bullshit, you don't believe it. What if we're in high school and all the girls are whispering about how good I am in bed and how well hung I am? Different ball game, right? That's an honest signal. Why is it an honest signal?
Everybody else is volunteering that and backing it up.
Yeah, first of all, there's more corroborating sources. But secondly, the corroborating sources don't have skin in the game. They're not saying it for an agenda. They're not saying it to get an outcome. They're saying it just because they're saying it. Okay, so that's a much more honest signal. And women, because they have to be more cautious, because they have to be more selective about who they sleep with, they will tend to make the process slower. It's in their benefit to slow things down, right? If a girl can make a pretty good decision about you on the first date and an incredibly good decision about you on the third date, it makes sense for her to try and make it take 3 dates to sleep with her, right? It's a very viable, very realistic biological strategy, right? And it's because it's harder to keep faking honest signals for 3 straight dates than it would be for 1 date, right? You're just more likely to make a slip up. And also we talk about girls going hot and cold, mixed signals. If you have a bunch of indicators of being high value and the one screaming indicator of being low value, the girl is going to trust the low value indicator, right? Because it's a negative signal is just by its nature more honest than a positive signal, right? I have every reason to tell you I'm amazing. I have no reason to show you I'm awful. So if I show you I'm awful, you're going to believe that signal. Does that make sense? And so this is why women can be so fickle. This is why women can love you, love you, love you. You make one little fucking mistake on a text, and then they're gone, right? Because you gave her a serious, honest signal that you're needy or low value or you're not actually a lover, you're a provider, something like that. Make sense? But this is why we get that behavior of women being so absolutely fickle, right? It's also why women trust what they trust. We talked about why women care so much about the opinions of their friends, right? Your portrayal, not very honest. Her friend's assessment, much more honest, right? Also for women, when we're talking about safety and risk, for any human being to have survived in the evolutionary environment, it took a lot of luck and it took a lot of cooperation, right? You put any of us, never mind even a stronger, more capable version of us that knows modern technology and maybe even knows ancient technology, you put us on the savannah alone with lions and tigers and whatever else, they're not both on the savannah, but whatever, lions and hyenas and all that shit, are we really honestly going to survive all by ourselves? No, absolutely not. Sooner or later, even for the most capable ever, we just freaking turn an ankle and we're fucked, right? It's very, very hard to survive without a tribe. That's for a man. For a woman, it's exponentially harder, and exponentially harder to pass her genes along because of the 9 months, being smaller and slower and all that kind of stuff, but also the 9 months of being incapacitated while being pregnant, right? And then also, to pass the genes along, the years of having this other creature that's dependent on you that's incredibly vulnerable, right? So to survive without a tribe for a woman is basically impossible. That is why women care so much about the tribe. That is why women value their friends' opinions, right? In evolutionary environment, if she found the most high status alpha guy ever, slept with him as a lover, he left, and then the tribe abandoned her, what would that outcome be like for her? Fucking death, right? The absolute worst. This is why women care so much about the social proof. That's why women care so much about the opinion of their friends.
I have firsthand experience of seeing, you go to a bar in New York, and sometimes, say, a girl would want to sleep with you or your friend or something, maybe in the bathroom after like 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've seen that as well. So how do you explain that? Because isn't that like a genetically bad strategy since you don't really have enough time to vet the person?
It is, but there's 2 things going on there. One is that if the value gap is big enough and the attraction is big enough, right? Through what guise is she sleeping with that guy? Is she sleeping with the guy in the bathroom in order to marry him and have him support her kids, or is she sleeping with him as the lover personality? So that's one, okay? The second thing to actually take into account there on top of it, which is an extenuating factor, because, well, it's alcohol basically, right? Or alcohol or drugs or whatever, right? So the things that humans do while consuming alcohol and drugs are basically the same that they do when not consuming those things, but exaggerated, right? More so. And so if a woman would sleep with a lover-type alpha male very quickly with in evolutionary environment with no alcohol and drugs involved, put alcohol and drugs there, that can take 3 days and make it 10 minutes. Does that make sense? So there is that factor as well, which is the reduction of inhibitions, these types of things as well, right? But the fundamental behavior is still the same, right? It's just an exaggerated version of that same fundamental behavior. But the question is she sleeping with them through the lover or provider guys? And actually, to give you another example, I actually thought of this one earlier and I lost it, and I'm going to tell you it again now, which is this lover-provider story. When I was living in Las Vegas, right? So I was primarily living in New York in the early days as a dating coach. And then I moved to Las Vegas to run a program out there. And up until the time I moved to Las Vegas, I had really bad Las Vegas game. I had really good normal city game. I was doing great in New York, great in Boston. I was sleeping with lots of girls. Had like a rotation of anywhere between like 3 to 8 girls at any given time most of the time. But most of the girls that slept with me, it was this like kind of mix of lover-provider, right? I was sleeping with the girls oftentimes first night or second time I'd see them, stuff like that. But then I'd keep them around and I'd have multiple long-term relationships. So it was kind of this mix. In Vegas, there's like no relationship, right? She's in town for a night or two, she's leaving, she has no idea of it possibly being a relationship. And so what I would have happen is I would go to Vegas when I didn't live there, and I would get girls really attracted to me and really into me, but they would want to like be my Vegas girlfriend. They'd want to like see me the next day and like have me like have their whole 7-day trip with them in Vegas and then like sleep with me on day 6 or not, right? Not that I would allow that to happen, but that was like what they were pushing for. That was like the type of relationship they seemed to want to have with me because there was a little too much provider in my game. So I got to living in Vegas, and this is very frustrating, and I didn't want that. And so I started upping the amount of lover in my game. I started upping how much I'm going to convey the lover's qualities and not the provider qualities. So I stopped giving as much biographical facts about myself, right? I stopped giving them the things that like get to know you and stopped giving them the comfort. And then I started disqualifying sex and talking about sex very early on and getting very physical in my game much, much, much faster. I started saying things like you guys may have heard from me, like we're not going to make the sex tonight, type of stuff like that, right? And then I started disqualifying myself. I started like blatantly like just telling the girl all my red flags and all the reasons why I'm a terrible boyfriend, right? So I started going farther and farther and farther down the road of absolute lover and no provider whatsoever. And it was funny because the more I did this, the more I went, I am not a provider, I'm not a provider, I'm a scandalous, cheesy, sleazy player. My results went up and up and up and up and up. And then I got to this one week where I slept with like 3 of the hottest girls in 1 week. But the first one, something interesting happened. Because up to this point, girls were always like trying to throw their phone numbers at me on top of sleeping with me. And this time I slept with a girl. She had amazing sex. She was telling me how incredible it was for her, all that kind of stuff. And then she left, and she didn't even ask for my number. I was like, that's strange. That's like never happened, right? They always like are like, yeah, we should hang out sometime again, or what's your number, or whatever. She like didn't care, didn't mention it, just walked off. I was like, that was interesting. I kind of feel awesome, but kind of weird at the same time. And then it happened a second time that week, right? Slept with another girl, amazing, good, didn't ask for my number afterwards, right? And so in the third one of that week, I asked for her number at the end. I'm like, so do you want to like exchange number? I know we live in different cities, but like just in case we're ever in the same city. She goes, no, ooh, no. Right? Like she was actually turned off, and like a little bit sickened by the fact that I asked for her number. Meanwhile, she had actually, been like very into it. Trust me, the sex actually was good. I'm not lying. In fact, I even have facts on this. We had a taxi service in Vegas that we would use as like special taxi we could call to the place. I ended up getting the same driver later on, and she told me how good the girl said the sex with me was. But she still was like, ooh, no. Right? Now, what happened? Up until that point, I was the absolute, like, cold, pure lover, no provider Vegas player. As soon as I asked for her number, there was something in the provider category, and it turned her off. And she's like, ooh, what have I done? Did I just have a one-night stand with a provider? Ooh. Right? Very, very interesting. Right? How girls interpret these things. Okay, cool. What was the question that came from? I lost my thread a little bit.
Bar bathrooms after 10.
Oh yeah, okay, well, that's a similar question. Very similar one. Okay, cool. All right, so let's get to your question then, about multiple long-term relationships, monogamy, non-monogamy, that kind of thing. As a man, do you care, assume a monogamous relationship, or assume just a relationship where you want to have kids, right? You're with a girl and you would like to have kids with her. Monogamous, whatever. But you want to have kids with this girl. Do you care if she sleeps with another guy? Yes. How much? A lot, right? Why? Biologically, why?
Paternity risk.
Yeah, paternity risk. Yeah, literally, right? One of the worst things you could do in an evolutionary environment and today in terms of genetic investment is to put all your time, resources, and effort into raising offspring that's not yours. That's a huge genetic fail, right? And you want to avoid that. And so men go way out of their way for that, right? There are cultures and religions that massively prize virginity and certainly are very much against being a slut, being promiscuous, that kind of stuff for women. Why? Because of this biological desire for men to be able to trust that their woman, their wife, is not going to sleep with some other guy. So as men, we care an extraordinary amount about if a girl cheats physically, okay? And you're probably like, what do you mean physically? What other kind of cheating is there, right? Cheating is a physical thing, right? As men, we care if the woman cheats physically. But let's look at women. As a woman, you're with a man and you'd like to have kids with him. And he's going to have kids with you, but he's going to sleep with some other women. He's not going to spend a penny on them. He's going to spend his 15 minutes sleeping with them and whatever time it takes to seduce them and never see them again. He's going to be a devoted husband and father, and he's very wealthy and has lots of resources. Do you care that much that he's sleeping with other women? Not really, right? Not really. And in fact, if you do care that he's sleeping with other women, the primary reason why you might care that he's sleeping with other women is because you're worried that he'll pick one of them over you and then start giving his time and resources to that one. If you knew absolutely that wasn't a possibility, you would care even less, right? And so women are not caring in this case about you cheating physically, but they are caring about you cheating emotionally or cheating in terms of your resources, okay? And that's kind of the dichotomy here when you talk about non-monogamous relationships. It's actually much easier than you might think to get a woman into a non-monogamous relationship because you're asking for physical non-monogamy, not emotional non-monogamy, right? And so that's a lot more palatable to her. And whenever you're framing your relationships, if you don't want non-monogamous relationships, you should frame them that way. And even if you're in a monogamous relationship, be aware that she's going to care a lot more about where you spend your time and your effort and your resources than about where your penis goes. Although, obviously, that would be breaking the contract in a monogamous relationship. Okay? Yeah, and so when you are talking about non-monogamous relationships, the most important thing for the girl is what she is getting out of the relationship, what the relationship feels like to her. And very often the girl will be fairly okay with you seeing other girls as long as it doesn't affect her actual experience. As soon as it starts bleeding into her experience, that's when she will typically care.
Talk about me and you, us, we're this, we're a good team.
Mm-hmm.
Are these kind of things counterproductive because those get you more into a provider frame? Should you kind of avoid having a more deep emotional connection? Or are those things still good? You just have to...
That's a great question. And there's that question, there's the one that you almost asked with it that I'm going to answer as well, which is good. The first you asked, you said that it seems that I'm saying it's better to come from a lover frame and go to the provider frame later, right? And then you said, how do I do that? The first question, though, before how do I do that is why? Why is it important to start from the lover frame and go to the provider frame? And it's because it's a more honest signal, okay? Lover frame is based on who you are, what your capabilities are. Provider frame is based on your willingness, what you're willing to do, right? And so if you're an out-of-her-league, high-value guy who's unwilling to do anything, you can prove through your behavior that you are, in fact, willing to do something, right? You can prove through more time, more commitment, that you are actually capable of that. But if you're the low-value guy that she'd only see as the provider, you can't put in more time being that guy and convince her you're the lover, right? And so it's much better to lead with who you are and what your high-end capability is, and then show what you're willing to give, right? Because it's a more honest signal, okay? All right. It's like if I was, recruiting for a sports team, right? There's a certain minimum speed I need from my athletes, and they can show me all the team loyalty and work ethic in the world. If they don't have that speed, it's not going to work. Now, I obviously also only want the fast ones that are also going to be good for the team, but there is a certain threshold where if you can't do the sport, if you can't do the physical thing, you're just not recruited, right? That's kind of the idea. So the lover thing is being the fast sprinter. And then the provider thing is being, good for the team, right? You find out the second one later. It also takes more time, right? You can run a 100-meter dash and find out she's a good sprinter. It takes you quite a while with in the team dynamic and going back and forth to find it out. So those are the reasons why you lead with lover and then the provider comes later. So that's an important thing as well. But in terms of what things say you're a lover, what things say you're a provider. So it's so many big things and there's also so many little things, right? Some examples of the little quick things. Just ask, what did I say? Ask me a question. Ask me any question.
What did you do last week?
Oh, it's really interesting you asked that. Last week I did a lot of really fun things. Okay, ask me the second time.
What did you do last week?
Last week? You're asking me that? Right? You see the difference? Who cares more about you? Who is more invested in you?
Me.
No, between the two people that I just was, who was more invested in you?
The
The first one's super invested and super like at your beck and call. The second one is kind of annoyed by you and could care less and is taking his time, right? And so the nature of the response is conveying lover versus provider. The speed of the response is conveying lover versus provider, right? What about if we're on a date and we spend the whole date talking about the weather and politics and our views on, I don't know, the growing technology, right? And then we have another date and we talk about all the, the things I'd like to do to you in bed. Which one's the lover and which one's the provider? Right? We know, right? You can tell, right? Here's one. Let's say you're a girl, you date a guy and you sleep with him the first night you meet him 2 hours in. You have another guy you sleep with him on the 5th date. Who's the lover, who's the provider, right? So there's all these indicators. And the second one, it's kind of inverting cause and effect because him being the lover might have been the reason why he slept with you in the first 2 hours. But also, when you backwards rationalize it, when you think it through, you're going to say, oh, I did that because he must be in the lover frame, right? And actually, backwards rationalizing, I'm glad that came up. That's a huge topic I want to talk to you guys about. People in general, women especially, but people in general, typically don't make their decisions completely logically. They make their decisions emotionally, they go with what they want, and then they justify it rationally afterwards, okay? I'll tell you a crazy, crazy story. All right, so story is this. I meet a girl in Vegas, and she's extremely into me, but we don't end up hooking up the first night we meet because she has some friend stuff going on or whatever. But then she actively goes out of her way to follow up with me super hard the next day, goes out of her way to get me on a date, to have me take her to lunch, and then we have lunch and go straight back to my room, and we basically hook up. But I actually did not perform at all sexually. Like this one particular case, I just completely dropped the ball sexually, all right? And so, and then it was really, really rushed because we were having the sex and then she had to get back to her friend. So I dropped the ball sexually and then she rushed out. Not because of trying to end it, but because she had this other plan. And so it was just very awkward, right? And so then she rationalized to herself, oh, our intimacy wasn't good, which actually that was true. But then, I have to go aside. So this girl actually is or at the time was in a sugar baby relationship with some other guy who's very, very rich. And she even said before, not having sex with me, before me failing sexually with her, she said, I love him, but I'm not in love with him. And she was seeing me as the guy that could replace him and super in love, that kind of stuff, right? But then I didn't perform sexually. She loses some of that emotions, whatever. And so now she all of a sudden she has this weird dichotomy where she keeps texting me how much she's in love with me and how much she likes me and stuff like that. But then when it actually comes to seeing me or meeting up with me, she just weirdly flaky for weird reasons, right? Why? Well, because if I was the guy who she thought I was and had delivered sexually, I would be in that lover category and it would be enough upside for her to risk losing what she has. But what I am for her, having failed sexually with her, right, is I'm the guy who's all of that risk of losing this incredible provider, who she does have maybe some lover thing with and whatever, but the risk is just too high. But the reasons she give make no sense, right? So the reason she gave for not wanting to see me eventually, she asked me so during the first night I tried to take her home. I was oh, we're gonna go to this other place, and we were 5 steps away from getting into a taxi and going back to my hotel. But then she's I gotta go back to see my friend. I want to see the DJ. And I was okay, fine, we'll go back. And I hung out with her the rest of the night, saw the DJ, saw her friend, took her home. And then again, she saw me the next day. She clearly was fine with it the next day. Clearly it wasn't a problem for her at the time. But down the road, she decides, no, what you trying to take me home was you didn't care about my wishes and it was manipulative. And I think that was really awful. And I don't respect a guy that would do that. Clearly, she still wanted to have sex with me very badly the next day, when that was fresh in her mind. But because she made the decision for other reasons, I was too much of a risk, that's then her rationalization. That rationalization makes no fucking sense whatsoever, right? And then after having that conversation with me where she's like, I don't trust you, you're a bad human being, et cetera, I'm just like, okay, cool, well, if you think that way, we shouldn't talk anymore. And then she's texting me all these photos of herself and videos of herself and trying to get my attention back, right? So she's very confused, right? She's confused. Her emotions are telling her one thing and telling her another thing. But the reasons she gives for it are not the real reasons. Absolutely not the real reasons. She's making the decision emotionally, justifying it logically, right? I'll tell you another crazy one. This happens all the time, actually, which is you go on a date with a girl, and it's nothing but physical. There's tons of sexual chemistry. You're making out, you're hooking up, you almost have sex with her, right? But it doesn't happen for whatever reason. Afterwards, she rationalizes she's not that into you. But then here's the thing that's crazy. She texts you, you know what, honestly, I really see you as more of a friend. That makes no sense, right? Because the one thing you didn't have was comfort. And she's saying, all I see with you is comfort. Completely, utterly irrational, illogical. You know 100% that's not the reason. You know what the real reason is, but that's her rationalization, right? So when you're in these situations, when you're dealing with women in general, trust their actions. Don't necessarily always trust the reasons they give. Don't necessarily always trust the rationalization. You have to find the pattern in the behavior first, and then you can give some weight to the rationalization, but don't trust it, right? But that's how people are. People are not, and this is men too, we don't necessarily make decisions rationally. We make decisions emotionally, justify them rationally for all kinds of things. And you know this. There's so many things you've bought on an impulse, and then you've justified why it was a good investment or why it was like you would have had to replace some other thing or whatever, right? So be aware of that. That's a huge phenomenon as well. So from the first moment, you are determining the frame through which the girl sees you, right? And if you walk up, and actually this actually goes into your question too. If you go up and the first thing you say is, I like you, you're already putting her as high value and you as chasing her, right? If you were able from the first moment to open with, I don't like you, right? Or you can't have me, that would be a very different frame, right? Or if you were able before the open, not that you could always make this happen, but if you were able before the open to have her see you with a hotter girl, right? And then she already sees you through as a high value guy and through the lover frame, that's gonna change the dynamic of everything that happens from there, right? Now, you can't necessarily have that social proof on the open, but every single thing you do is kind of backwards conveying your life history, because you can act in a certain way. In a small tribe of people, if you were to act super, super cocky and you were also incompetent, what would happen to you? You'd get beat up, maybe kicked out, beat up and or kicked out, right? If you were super, super cocky and you were the best hunter, best fighter, and only doctor in the tribe, what would they do? All the women would sleep with you, right? That might happen even if you weren't cocky in that case too, but being cocky might accentuate it, right? So if you walk around in the modern day being cocky, from her evolutionary mind, what is that conveying? It's conveying he must have been able to be cocky growing up without getting punched in the face too many times, right? Because even today, we all kind of grew up in small tribes. Like, what is a kindergarten class or like a high school class? It's kind of a small tribe, right? If you got through school and managed to stay cocky, that kind of conveys maybe that cockiness is supported, right? And the way that cold approach pickup works, it's a glitch in the matrix, right? You get to walk up and act like anyone you want to be. You get to act like the guy who had every girl into him in high school, whether or not that was true for you, because she didn't go to your high school, and she doesn't know. So as long as you can support that, and as long as your honest signals can keep that up throughout the interaction and throughout the relationship, you are that guy to her, right? I mean, I don't talk to girls about who I was in middle school and high school and, that I was a virgin through high school and shit like that. But as far as they're concerned, when they're sleeping with me, they think they're sleeping with the guy that slept with all the girls in high school probably, right? Because of what I'm conveying, right? So on a cold approach, what should you be doing? You should be acting as if. You should walk in with the frame that you expect her to like you, because girls usually do. And you should be assuming she already likes you. And that's just smart, by the way, right? If she likes you and you assume she likes you, you're doing right. If she doesn't like you and you assume she likes you, you're still giving yourself the best possible chance. But in either case, if you assume she doesn't like you, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So there's no reason to ever assume she doesn't like you, right? It's kind of an interesting trick question. is it useful at all to be able to read, you know what indicators of interest is? Like ways you can tell the girl likes you? Is it at all useful to be able to tell when a girl likes you? Is there any utility to it? Yes, there is, right? But what is that utility? Where is that actually helpful? Because you should be assuming she likes you anyway. In what way is it even useful? Exactly. We know the advanced guys in the room. Yeah, it's useful for escalation, right? You should be assuming she likes you, but the point of reading how much she likes you is to know how fast you can escalate. Can I get away with moving her to another venue? Can I get away with making out with her? Is she ready to be closed for a date yet? Those kind of things. So it's very useful for escalation, but it should not be useful for your view of the interaction or your view of yourself, right? So you should be going in from the first moment, assuming she likes you and acting accordingly, acting with confidence, right? To the extent that you have permission to, you should be getting to the point, but that's where finding out how much she likes you is useful. Essentially, what you'd like to do, you mentioned this actually, that what the girl wants to connect with you, and you'd like to connect with her. But if you're the one seeking the connection, you're coming from a lower value frame. So the key is to get her to seek the connection so that then you can do what you wanted to do in the first place. And the way to get her to want to connect with you is to make it a little hard, right? It's to indicate to her that maybe she can't, and to establish enough value, right? What is value? Your confidence is value. Your ability to interact in a way that shows you know the dance, like that you understand how to flirt with women, i.e. implying you've had other women, is value. The stories you tell, conveying a good life, is value, right? But the point is to let her not know she can have you and build enough value before you start trying to connect with her. If you start trying to connect with her before she wants a connection, she's going to recoil. If you make her want to connect with you first and then you connect, she's going to lap it all up. So that's the secret. And that's actually like basically the thing that sets game apart from any other way you're meeting a girl is how do you set up that dynamic right away, right? How do you, instead of saying I love you, you're like I would love you if, or I don't love you yet. And then, oh, I'm starting to gradually like you. You're winning me over. Okay, I like you, but, right? It's just setting up that little dynamic. Think of the process of meeting a girl the way you'd think of a romantic comedy, right? The two people in a romantic comedy, they start out maybe disliking each other or having tension, and then it has to be earned, right? So that's what I would think about on the cold approach, is going in with confidence and finding the way for her to earn it.
I'm curious about the whole girls kind of being nervous when they're in sexual states, or let's just say for example, I had a set on Saturday where she was getting turned on without me saying anything verbally, just through eye contact and physicality. And she said something like, "Oh, I'm imagining doing inappropriate things to you," or something like that.
She said that to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, I've had that happen before where girls just became super flaky after. Is that, I'm just curious as to your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad we brought that up because that's another thing I wanted to talk about. So let's talk about flaking. Why do girls flake? And also, I'll talk about why she gets nervous. So why does a girl get nervous in your presence when she likes you? Well, it's because she's at risk of having sex. And for a girl, sex is a big risk, right, in an evolutionary environment, right? If she were to get pregnant with you, and especially if she doesn't know you, that's very, very risky. It's very exciting for her, but it's also very, very risky. So that's why she's feeling that. And in the moment, she's feeling all those emotions. Later on, and you missed this part of the lecture, but later on, when she's not in your presence, she's more in her normal state of mind. And women are inherently very, very risk averse as compared to men, right? There's all kinds of, I can go into all this stuff, but they're very risk averse as compared to men. And so when she's interacting through that risk averse mindset, she's evaluating on different criteria, and she's also giving you far less of the benefit of the doubt, right? And so, she's essentially in a different mindset. She's essentially evaluating you differently. She's being influenced by different people. She has different priorities. She is effectively a different person the next day in a lot of ways when she's making that decision. I would say that's essentially it. The more, again, he said, the more that she has to rationalize you in a positive way, that's absolutely going to help. The more she felt for you in the first place, that's going to help. The more subtle indicators she has that she liked you a lot at the time is going to help. So the difference, this is the little subtle things, but the difference between when you get the girl's number, you text her versus she texts you. If she texts you, that helps a little bit because now when she's looking back at the text conversation, she knows that she texted you something. And especially if she texts you something particular, right? Something that's a particular thing that she liked in the interaction that brings her back into that state and also reminds her, hey, I like this guy. It's an honest signal that, that it was genuine at the time. So the more of those kind of things you have. Another thing for anti-flaking is like if, for example, you have good social media and she can go back and get what she considers to be honest signals that you're a certain type of person, that can kind of convince her, right? But the longer she's out of your, like, it's almost like your bubble of feelings, because as a guys who know game are very strange. It's a very strange experience for a girl, right? It's very unusual for some guy to make her feel this many emotions this quickly. It's very, very out of character, and it's not happening to the girl all the time, right? And so afterwards, when she looks back at it, it doesn't seem like it was her, right? She's not. It's very cognitive dissonancy with her perception. And so number one, she just might not trust it. Number two, she might actually be afraid of it. She might be, oh, that wasn't me. I can't do that kind of stuff, right? And also, you're aware of, like, obviously you're very aware of point of no return. Most of you guys aware of point of no return? You guys know what this is? So point of no return is when you're getting physical with a girl and things are leading up to sex, all right? As things get more and more and more sexual, a girl gets more and more turned on, more invested, more likely to see you again, up to a certain point. And then if she goes all the way to sex with you, she's very likely to see you again because she made that commitment of sex with you. But if she gets very, very close to having sex with you and then decides not to, this is what I call the point of no return. You've gone past the point of no return without sleeping with her. Well, now she's leaving, and the last thing she's remembering is the reason why she didn't have sex with you, which isn't good. And she also feels like if she sees you again, she's for sure gonna have sex with you. So there's all this pressure on it, and you're gonna get this huge, huge incidence of flaking, right? And so up to a certain point in escalation, you're very likely to get a second date or a follow-up date. If you escalate all the way to have sex, you're extremely likely to get a follow-up. But in this little window between the point of no return and sex, it's very, very negative for you, right? In a weird way, being really good at game sort of puts a girl in the point of no return early sometimes, right? Because she's feeling these things with you she's not used to, and she feels like if she sees you, it will be for sure sex, right? I had a situation recently. That a girl, like she like kind of booty called me late at night and kind of explained, like trying to explain to her how she can come see me or whatever. I said, and by the way, if we do hook up, it doesn't necessarily just have to be for sex, right? And she literally thumbs down emoji'd that message, as in like, don't even tell me it's not for sex. Like, I only want you for sex, right? But her view of me was so like steeped in me as a sexual being that that's the only way she saw me. Now, for that particular girl, it was just fine and she was into it. But for other girls, you can see how that would lead to flaking. If she sees you as solely and only for sex and doesn't want anything to do with you that doesn't have sex in it, and she doesn't see herself as a slut, put that all together. Does that make sense? And so yeah, the more she feels like the interaction's been out of character for her, and point of no return is when it's out of character, very close to sex. But in general, the more she feels like she acted slutty or acted out of character or didn't act like herself, that can make her very, very nervous. And the more she feels it's just for sex, right? And so if you do know at a certain point that you can't pull or can't take the girl home, even if you haven't escalated that much, having more normal conversation and being a little more boring might actually help you get less flaking. So here's the solution to the point of no return, right? Is you have to be aware of when that's likely to happen and make sure that you cross the point of no return with a lot of momentum, okay? And so where does the point of no return occur? It occurs when something overtly slutty is happening or something overtly sexual is happening. And it's different things for different girls, but here's some examples. When clothes start coming off, that can oftentimes be a point of no return type of thing, right? If like anyone starts touching anybody's genitalia, that can start be like a point of no return type of a thing. Let's see, what are some other good ones? A condom coming out can be a point of no return type of thing. Stuff like that. Stuff that like very clearly indicates sex can be point of no return. And so if you are proceeding in that direction and you are concerned that there's not enough there, you're concerned that she's not fully bought in, she's not fully into it yet, I would really suggest holding off on crossing the point of no return. And you want to cross the point of no return either when she's very excited, or better yet, the best way to cross the point of no return is to have her cross it instead of you, right? So if you cross the point of return by her escalating on you, it's very, very safe. And actually, that's why one of the best ways to game at an advanced level is to get the girl chasing you and escalating on you. So like you're making out, pulling away, she's constantly asking you to do more, asking you for more touch, that kind of stuff is good, right? And things like during the physical escalation, having her do stuff on you, instead of putting your hands on her body, putting her hands on your body, those types of things can be very, very good, right? I'll give you one weird asterisk on the point of no return thing. In general, having her escalate on you is really, really good. One particular thing to be a little cautious of, if the girl jumps on your lap and starts grinding hard on you on the lap, and you're in a position where you can't move much and you're just the recipient, be careful, because even though she's escalating on you, sometimes girls will point of no return that, you didn't do anything, and they'll just jump off and leave. So when that happens, I oftentimes will actually physically take them off me and like slow things down, just because I've seen that happen so many times. It's a weird one where even where they're escalating, they put themselves in a point of no return because they're just getting very aroused, whatever. But in general, you want to slow things down, be calm, be relaxed, and make sure that when you get to those last bits towards sex, that she's extremely, extremely bought in. It's not just a non-no, it's like a heavy yes from her.